Hello students, today we are going to take the last chapter from our English textbook, that is All Summer in a Day by Ray Douglas Bradbury. Ray Douglas Bradbury was an American fantasy science fiction, horror and mystery fiction author. His story, All Summer in a Day, is set on the planet Venus and describes in vivid detail the day when the planet experiences sunshine, an event that occurs only once in 7 years. The scene is set in a school where the teachers and children await the appearance of the sun. The story explores the darker side of human nature, that is, manifest even in children, as they pick on Margot simply because they see her as different from them. Bradbury's tale ends on a note of hope, as the children seem to feel shame and remorse for their thoughtlessness. I'm sure that most of you all might be watching some serials on Netflix. One of my favorite serials on Netflix is Lost in Space. The characters played in this play, they are somewhere in space and they get separated from their mothership, and in their journey they travel to different planets. It's a way of imagining. It's all imagination. We know very well that there is no life possible on the planet Venus. But here, the author Ray Douglas Bradbury, he imagines a life where the planet Venus has rain for not 1 year but 7 years in a stretch. Continuous torrential rainfall. And there is summer only for a single hour or two. Just for an hour there is summer on this planet, that too once in 7 years. Just imagine, rain, 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 rain. Right now, this is a very good time to study this chapter because we know that it's raining. It's not raining as much as it is shown here in this textbook, in this story by Ray Douglas Bradbury. But let's implore the imaginative part of a fictitious writer. Let's start the chapter, All Summer in a Day. Ready? Ready. Now? Soon. Do the scientists really know? Will it happen today? Will it? Look, look, see for yourself. The children press to each other like so many roses, so many weeds intermixed, peering out for a look at the hidden sun. It rained. It had been raining for 7 years. Thousands upon thousands of days compounded and filled from one end to the other with rain, with the drum of gush of water, with the sweet crystal fall of showers, and the conclusion of storms so heavy they were tidal waves come over the island. 1,000 forests had been crushed under the rain and grown up 1,000 times to be crushed again. And this was the way life forever on the planet Venus. And this was the schoolroom of the children of the rocket men and women who had come to a raining world to set up civilization and live out their lives. It's stopping! It's stopping! Yes, yes! Margot stood apart from them, from these children who could ever remember a time when there wasn't rain and rain and rain. They were all 9 years old, and if there had been a day 7 years ago when the sun came out for an hour and showed its face to the stunned world, they could not recall. So, here the author is talking of a planet, the planet Venus, where it is raining continuously, torrentially, heavy downpour of rain, so torrential that at times there are waves like tsunamis, huge waves like tsunamis covering up the islands. The author says they had many forests have been submerged in water, and many forests have rose again during the short break of summer. Their children, they're talking about an event which is happening once in 7 years. These are all 9-year-old kids, and they don't remember how the sun looks, how it feels to see the sun, how it feels to really experience the hot sun rays on their skin. Apart from Margot, Margot was different from the rest because she was born on earth, while the others in this classroom were all born in Venus. They were the descendants of the rocket men, as they were called, because these people were sent to set up a colony in Venus. And Margot was new over here. She was on earth for a longer time, and she knows exactly how the sun looks because she had a better experience of the sun by seeing the sun almost every day of the time that she had stayed up on earth. Whereas these children had seen the sun when they were 2-year-old kids, and that too they had seen the sun only for a single hour. Perhaps they don't even remember how the sun looks. They only know what the teachers tell them, what the pictures that is shown to them about the sun, how the teacher explained to them. That's the only experience that they have. But Margot is different from the rest. Sometimes at night, she heard them stir in remembrance, and she knew they were dreaming and remembering gold or a yellow crayon or a coin large enough to buy the world with. She knew they thought they remembered a warmness, like a blushing in the face, in the body, in the arms and legs, and trembling hands. But then they always awoke to the tatting drum, the endless shaking down of clear bead necklaces upon the roof, the walk, the gardens, the forests, and the dreams were gone. All day yesterday, they had read in class about the sun, about how like a lemon it was, and how hot, and they had written small stories or essays or poems about it. I think the sun is a flower that blooms for just 1 hour. That was Margot's poem, read in a quiet voice in the still classroom while the rain was falling outside. Oh, you didn't write that, protested one of the boys. I did, said Margot. I did. William, said the teacher. But that was yesterday. Now the rain was slackening, and the children were crushed in the thick, great windows. So, Margot, who had a better experience than the rest of the kids here, she saw them, she heard them stir and trying to remember how the sun looked like, how the sun looked like a yellow crayon, or it looked like a large coin with which they could buy the entire world with. They felt that they felt as if They realized how the sun feels to them. But when they woke up in the morning, it was the same rattling noise of the sun, the steady rattle of the sun. See the different way in which the author describes the dropping of rainfall, and how what type of noise the raindrops make. The author describes the rainfall by a sound of tatting drum, the endless shaking down of clear bead necklaces upon the roof, upon the walk, the gardens, the forest, and the dreams were gone. That's how the author describes that how these people felt. But that was yesterday. When the teacher had given them something to write about the sun, and Margot had come up with a very beautiful poem, and she had said that, I think the sun is a flower that blossoms or that blooms for just 1 hour. That was Margot's poem. And William, he said, oh, you did not write that. William feels that somebody else has written the poem for her. And the teacher scolds William to stay quiet. But that was yesterday. Now the rain was reducing, it was slackening, and the children were all crushed together near the big window. There was a big window in the classroom where they were looking outside for the first sign of sunshine. Where's teacher? She'll be back. She'd better hurry. We'll miss it. They turned on themselves like a feverish wheel, all tumbling spokes. Margot stood alone. She was a very frail girl who looked as if she had been lost in the rain for years, and the rain had washed out the blue from her eyes, and the red from her mouth, and the yellow from her hair. She was an old photograph dusted from an album, whitened away, and if she spoke at all, her voice would be a ghost. Now she stood, separate, staring at the rain and the loud, wet world beyond the huge glass. What are you looking at? Said William. Margot said nothing. Speak when you're spoken to. He gave her a shove, but she did not move. Rather, she let herself be moved only by him and nothing else. They edged away from her. They would not look at her. She felt them go away, and this was because she would play no games with them in the echoing tunnels of the underground city. If they tagged her and ran, she stood blinking after them and did not follow. When the class sang songs about happiness and life and games, her lips barely moved. Only when they sang about the sun and the summer did her lips move as she watched the drenched windows. And then, of course, the biggest crime of all was that she had come here only 5 years ago from Earth. And she remembered the sun and the way the sun was, and the sky was when she was 4 in Ohio. And then, and they had been on Venus all their lives. And they had been only 2 years old when last the sun came out, and had long since forgotten the color and heat of it and the way it really was. But Margot remembered. In everybody's life there is a villain, and here the villain in Margot's life was William. William seems to be the bully of the class. He is throwing his weight around Margot. And what is the reason? Why do people behave so strangely with Margot? The only reason why the other students from the classroom did not involve themselves with Margot, because Margot was different from them. She had come from the planet Earth, when she was 5 years old. That is, it had been 4 years since Margot was in their classroom, sharing the classroom. But they did not involve because Margot herself would stay aloof. Margot was totally lost in this planet. She missed the planet Earth. She missed the sun so much that she was, in a way, shocked that there is no sunlight, there is no sunshine, there is no heat of the sun, that she would not involve herself when the other kids used to play games. It was only William who would shove her, who would shake her, and it was only William who was allowed to do this for her, with her. The only time when she was heard in class was when they were singing the song about the sun. It was only then that she began to sing about the summer, and her lips moved as if she watched the drenched window. She was looking out of the window, hoping for the sun to come out. Margot's only crime was that she had come from the planet Earth 5 years ago, and the rest of the students, the rest of the people of the class were born and brought up on the planet Venus itself. They could only say what the sun looked like, but Margot actually remembered what the sun looked like. "It's like a penny," she said once, eyes closed. "No, it is not," the children cried. "It's like a fire," she said, "in the stove." "You are lying. You don't remember," cried the children. But she remembered and stood quietly apart from all of them and watched the pattering windows. And once a month ago, she had refused to shower in the school shower room and clutched her hands to her ears and over her head, screaming, "The water mustn't touch her head." So after that, dimly, she sensed it. She was different, and they knew her difference and kept away. There was talk that her father and mother were taking her back to Earth next year. It seemed vital to her that they do so, though it would mean the loss of thousands of dollars to her family. And so, the children hated her for all these reasons of big and little consequences. They hated her pale snow face, her waiting silence, her thinness, and a possible future. "Get away!" The boy gave another push. "What are you waiting for?" Then, for the first time, she turned and looked at him, and what she was waiting for was in her eyes. We come to know how much Margot hated the water, hated the rainfall, so much so that a month ago she refused to take a shower in the school shower room. The life here was different. Everybody had to go and take a shower in the shower room before they attended the classroom. But Margot refused to allow the water to fall on her head. She said the water mustn't touch her head. And then she realized, though slowly, that she was different. And so did the other pupils of the class. They all realized that Margot was different. And then they heard certain rumors that how Margot's parents were deciding to take Margot back to the earth. And they hated Margot for all other reasons, apart from Margot coming from the planet Earth, apart from her paleness of her eyes, her features, her hair, and that she might go back to Earth. For all these reasons, they began to hate Margot. "Get away," the boy gave her another push. So who's the boy here? It's William. He pushed her again and he asked a question. "What are you waiting for? Why are you waiting here? What is the reason?" And when she turned around and looked at William, The answer was clearly written in her eyes that she was waiting for a glimpse of the sunlight, for a glimpse of the sun breaking the clouds and coming into plain view. Then, for the first time, she turned and looked at him, and what she was waiting for was in her eyes. Well, don't wait around here, cried the boy savagely. You won't see anything. Her lips moved. Nothing, he cried. It was all a joke, wasn't it? He turned to the other children. Nothing happening today, is it? They all blinked at him and then, understanding, laughed and shook their heads. Nothing, nothing. So when William realized that what Margot was waiting for, he decided to pull her legs. He told her that whatever news was given about the sun coming out was all false. There was no sun coming out today, neither today nor tomorrow, and that she would not see the sun again. And as if to get confirmation from the other classmates, he turns around and asks the other classmates, the other children in class, that what they heard news about the sun. Is the sun coming out? At first the children could not catch on, but immediately they realized that William was trying to pull a joke on Margot, and they all answered together saying, nothing, nothing, there's no sun coming out today. Oh, but, Margot whispered, her eyes helpless. But this is the day. The scientists predicted. They say they know the sun. All a joke, said the boy, and seized her roughly. Hey, everyone, let's put her in the closet before the teacher comes. No, said Margot, falling back. They surged about her, caught her up, and bore her, protesting, and then pleading, and then crying, back into a tunnel, a room, a closet, where they slammed and locked the door. They stood looking at the door and saw it trembling from her beating and throwing herself against it. They heard her muffled cries. Then, smiling, they turned and went out and back down the tunnel, just as the teacher arrived. Ready, children? She glanced at her watch. Yes, said everyone. Are we all here? Yes. The rain slacked still more. They crowded to the huge door. The rain stopped. It was as if, in the midst of a film concerning an avalanche, a tornado, a hurricane, a volcanic eruption, something had first gone wrong with the sound apparatus, thus muffling and finally cutting off all the noise, all of the blasts and repercussions and thunders, and then, second, ripped the film from the projector and inserted in its place a beautiful tropical slide which did not move or tremor. The world ground to a standstill. The silence was so immense and unbelievable that you felt your ears had been stuffed or you had lost your hearing altogether. The children put their hands on the ears. They stood apart. The door slid back, and the smell of the silent, waiting world came into them. Suddenly, William had a very dreadful idea. He caught hold of Margot and he told the other boys and girls to let's take her to a room, to a closet, and lock her up in that room. They all knew how eagerly she was waiting for the sun. They all knew that the one thing that Margot was longing for was to have a glimpse of the sunlight, of the bright sun. But they didn't want Margot to enjoy even this, because she never joined in the games, because they never liked Margot, because Margot was so different from them. They take her and put her in the closet before the teacher comes. And when the teacher comes and she asks everyone that is everyone present here, they all answer yes. None of them had the courage to say that no, Margot is missing, Margot has been locked up in the closet. And neither did the teacher bother to have a head count to take the attendance. She assumed that everything was quite well. And then the minutes ticked by, and finally the rain started to recede, and the rain stopped completely. There was no thundering noise, there was no rattling noise of the sun. It was as if in the olden days there used to be that reel movie running on a reel, and whenever there was a disturbance in the reel used to flutter, make a lot of noise, fut noise that way. And suddenly somebody changes the reel, and there's in place of a heavy shower, a heavy downpour, there was a beautiful scenery of everything which is quiet and calm, as if suddenly the person has lost the sense of hearing. It was so calm because they were so much accustomed to the noise that this calmness was as if they had turned deaf. The world ground to a standstill. The silence was so immense and unbelievable that you felt your ears had been stuffed, or you had lost your hearing altogether. The children put their hands to the ears, they stood apart, the door slid back, and the smell of the silent, waiting world came into them. The sun came out. It was the color of flaming bronze, and it was large, and the sky around it was a blazing blue tile color, and the jungle burned with sunlight as the children, released from their spell, rushed out, yelling into the springtime. Now don't go too far, called the teacher after them. You have only 2 hours, you know. You wouldn't want to get caught out. But they were running and turning their faces up to the sky and feeling the sun on their cheeks like a warm iron. They were taking off their jackets and letting the sun burn their arms. Oh, it's better than the sun lamps, isn't it? Much, much better. They stopped running and stood in the great jungle that covered Venus, that grew and never stopped growing, tumultuously, even as you watched it. It was a nest of octopi, clustering up great arms of flesh, like weed, weaving, flowering in the brief spring. It was the color of rubber and ash, this jungle, from the many years without sun. It was the color of stones and white cheeses and ink, and it was the color of the moon. So finally, when the sun came out and the doors were open for the children, they all ran out. It was very like a similar scene when small nursery KG children, when the school gets over, how they scream and rush out of school. They are so happy to go home. In the same way, the children were so happy to come out of the school and go into the jungle that was outside. And the jungle was very different from the jungles that we see. The color of the plants were grey as the stones that we see around. It was as grey as the sunlight, as white as cheese. They were almost colorless because the forest lacked sunlight. The forest was continuously being tattered and showered with heavy downpour of rain, always covered with a thick, dark cloud. And once the sun came out, the plants grew as if they were octopuses, like octopi, the arms of the octopi, growing very fast and encompassing everything around it. The children lay out, laughing on the jungle mattress, and heard it sigh and squeak under them, resilient and alive. They ran along the trees. They slipped and fell. They pushed each other. They played hide and seek and tag. But most of all, they squinted at the sun until the tears ran down their faces. So the children were making the most of the sunlight that was available to them. They were lying down on the mat, the jungle mat, and they were enjoying the rain. But more than the rain, they were sorry, more than the sunlight. They were enjoying the sunlight. More than enjoying the sunlight, they were squinting their eyes and looking at the sun until tears came rolling down their cheeks. They put their hands up to the yellowness and the amazing blueness, and they breathed of the fresh air and listened to the silence which suspended them in a blessed sea of no sound and no motion. They looked at everything and savored everything. Then, wildly, like animals escaped from the caves, they ran and ran in shouting circles. They ran for an hour and did not stop running. And then, in the midst of the running, one of the girls wailed. Everyone stopped. The girl, standing in the open, held out her hand. "Oh, look, look," she said, trembling. They came slowly to look at her open palm. In the center of it, cupped and huge, was a single raindrop. She began to cry, looking at it. They glanced quietly at the sun. Oh, oh. So why did the girl begin to cry after looking at the raindrop? Because she knew that now for the next 7 years there would be no sun, and the sun would soon be covered by thick blanket of clouds. And everybody was so sad, and they exclaimed, "Oh, oh." A few cold drops fell on their noses and their cheeks and their mouths. The sun faded behind a stir of mist. A wind blew cold around them. They turned and started to walk back towards the underground houses, their hands at their sides, their smiles vanishing away. A boom of thunder startled them, and like leaves before a new hurricane, they tumbled upon each other and ran. Lightning struck 10 miles away, 5 miles away, a mile, a half mile. The sky darkened into midnight in a flash. They stood in the doorway of the underground for a moment until it was raining hard. Then they closed the door and heard the gigantic sound of the rain falling in tons and avalanches, everywhere and forever. Will it be 7 more years? Yes, 7. Then one of them gave a little cry. "Margot!" "What?" "She is still in the closet where we locked her. Margot!" They stood as if someone had driven them like so many stakes into the floor. They looked at each other and then looked away. They glanced out at the world that was raining now, and raining steadily. They could not meet each other's glances. Their faces were solemn and pale. They looked at their hands and feet, their faces down. "Margot," one of the girls said. "Well?" No one moved. "Go on," whispered the girl. They walked slowly down the hall in the sound of cold rain. They turned through the doorway to the room in the sound of the storm and thunder, lightning on their faces, blue and terrible. They walked over to the closet door slowly and stood by it. Behind the closet door was only silence. They unlocked the door even more slowly and let Margot out. A very sad ending to the story. Sad in the sense because Margot, who had been waiting for so many years to see the glimpse of the sun, was deprived. The only thing she cared was for a glimpse of the sun. And in their pranks, in their stupidity, William and the rest of the boys and girls of the classroom had locked Margot in the closet and had completely forgotten about her until someone remembered when it was raining torrentially. What made that girl to think of Margot? Perhaps the experience of the warmness of the sun. Perhaps they realized that what Margot had said was true. How good it felt to feel the warmness of the sunlight directly on your face, directly on your skin, to look at the sun, to stare at it until your eyes watered. When the sun was gone, it was then that she realized that Margot had missed something. But here, at the end of the story, we have hope. Hope that perhaps they would no longer treat Margot as they were treating her earlier. Perhaps they were remorseful. They felt sorry for themselves, sorry that they had treated Margot in such a way. They felt sorry for Margot, that Margot was unable to witness this beautiful sunlight on the planet Venus. So the story ends on a hopeful note, perhaps that things would be better henceforth for Margot. It was when they went to the closet, Margot had accepted that she has been locked in. She did not cry, she did not whinge, she did not bang the door. And when the door opened, it was very silent, and they silently took out Margot from the room.